pretty well, even though they haven't played it at all yet.
Yeah, and maybe that's going to be part of the advantage of one of those dungeons that they start practicing more frequently during the tournament, when they say, okay, well, we played one game on Friday. Okay, we have time to practice. We played one series on Saturday. We got time to practice. And now they're going to start looking at focusing on this dungeon because there's going to be a lot of it coming up. So game number 1 between Echo and Pima Imi is squared up and ready for us as Theater of Pain gets going.
All right, so let's look what Echo has in store for us in this dungeon, as they have not shown us this dungeon, this tournament yet. They did play it 2 weeks ago, but lots of things have changed since then. And of course, we also have different affixes. So we'll see what they do as they pull a bunch of trash on top of the first boss here, Pima, as well, as they both commit their bloodlust for this pull. And one thing to note here is that it is actually inspiring, which causes the mobs to basically make other mobs around them CC immune. That means also interrupt immune, which can cause some issues here. As you see, Curse actually going down for Pima here. They do have a battle rust available to get him back up, but already a little bit of a mistake here coming out for Pima.
He's a Sooth too.
He died again.
What did he just die? Did he get stunned immediately? What did he die to?
I'm not sure, but this is a huge loss. Now they committed their battle rest, and yeah, they can't get him back up again, so they're just gonna have to finish the boss without him.
He's their Soothe too. Desia's gonna hit.
True. Yeah.
I don't know if he already soothed Desia or not, but Desia will put a massive shield on herself and run at targets. It looks like they've already gone into that phase, so it's less punishing. But on top of that, look. So there's the inspiring mob. Jay's actually frost novaing it and looking to polymorph it off to the side, because that's the strategy that PIB does, is they leave this inspiring mob for later on in the dungeon. But Echo now, absolutely massive lead at the beginning here.
Yeah, Echo already done with this first boss, as they didn't have any issues on their side. Now they do have to wait for this RP before they can get down into the other area. So just gotta wait a little bit here. Now, thankfully, the rest, the out of combat rest, is not gonna take any time off of Pima because of this RP, right? So since there's nothing they can do here anyway, they do have the time to get their hunter back up here without losing any more additional time, but already 10 seconds on the board here and finishing off the boss later because of this death. So really not something you want to see. Small difference in trash as well. If you can see, Echo actually pulled 7% of trash here at the entrance, while Pima chose to skip one of the mobs as they sheeped it and then shadow melted off the aggro because of the pride timings later on, right?
Yeah, on the left side of your screen, you do see Echo there. They used an invisibility potion to be able to skip half the platform of Shackled Souls. They did end up grabbing, I think, one of the inspired Shackled Souls in with that elemental, just cleaving off the elemental, doing a really good job of making sure that guy dies rapidly. They then deposit the orb on the right-hand side, meaning that they're trying to go to the double Bone Mage pull. This double Bone Mage will not actually proc their pride, I don't think, because they're at 14% right now.
Yeah, definitely won't be proccing their pride. They might be proccing it on the next platform, which we will see. Interesting pathing here by Echo for sure. Do you see the trash difference as well between Pima and Echo? So Pima slightly behind in trash. So that means they're also not going to be proccing their pride on these two mages here. So both of them also choosing to go the same route. We do see one Magus here who has inspired buff. A debuff rather, which they just chose to use the incap for that one and ring it away, and now they're pulling the Portal Guardian on top of these 3 casters. This can be a pretty dangerous pull because of the Soul Storm that the Guardian is casting, and on top of that you also have those magic debuffs going out on the whole group, ticking for a huge amount of damage.
Yeah, but notably the magic debuffs can be mass dispelled, which is a really big advantage of having that Discipline Priest. I really like the CC on that Bone Mage, as you do actually have this Pride here. So CCing the Bone Mage, you're just going to end up cleaving it down with the Pride. There's not going to be any relevant time loss, because you would already have to be playing that Pride otherwise. So the opportunity cost there is pretty low. On the side of Pima, very similar pull. It looks like they CC'd their Bone Mage. Now they're killing off that Portal Guardian and that Soul Binder in unison to be able to proc their 20% Pride. Echo's starting to drop really low at the end of theirs, but they deal with it really well. They're making their way onto the next platform, but they're notably going to this Bone Reaver. He does like a Blade Storm style cast, but basically you can pull the Bone Reaver with all of the Bone Mages, and as long as you focus and cleave the Bone Mages, and just you're not actively cleaving off the Bone Reaver, you're actually focusing down the Bone Mages, this pack is not really that dangerous.
Yeah, I think it's pretty efficient to play this just because you get the full use of your pride. Because of this Bone Reaver having a high amount of HP, and you can just pull it left and right to be able to deal with the side packs as well. So you have this high HP target that you're cleaving off, and you deal with the lower HP targets, and you just make sure you have the pride. Looks like they actually did not get the full value out of it, as they were finished with the trash pack before the pride even ran out. So they were faster than I thought they were. But yeah, they're moving to this last platform before the boss. They're up to 38%, so that means they're going to be proccing that 40% pride here, and they're going to have it for the boss. That is something that we've seen teams do differently, depending on what kind of routing they choose to do, depending on what pride they want to have in which situation, right? So seeing that they use one pride for the trash and one pride for the boss is interesting, especially since both of the teams are choosing to do the same thing.
Yeah, now you do have that Death Speaker going down on the side of Echo. Now they're focusing down this manifestation of pride. They're going to be getting it down and taking that 40% pride into Kultarok. I would say that that's pretty standard. Notably, Echo skipped a lot. Echo and Pima ended up skipping a lot of their Shackled Souls whenever they ended up going into the room with the Death Speaker. So they will be able to have those and, like, I would say, really freely cleave them into Kultarok. You'll see probably Frag or Gingy end up tagging them, and they will eventually teleport onto the platform with Kultarok, be able to be cleaved off and cleaved down on this boss with basically no loss. Look at that, Frag right there. It instantly misdirects now, multi-shots a bunch of those ads, and now they will just be porting in at a moment's notice.
Yep, we will see those Shackled Souls, and they're really a lot easier for the healer to deal with on this boss here, especially if you don't pull all of them at the same time, because you have the Master Spell to get rid of the magic effect on this boss, which is the most dangerous thing here, right? The debuff, the magic debuff, is the one that ticks for the most damage, and if you have the Master Spell on every second application, it's just it's just a lot easier for the healer to deal with it. And then you also have those the souls, the Shackled Souls, that you deal with at the same time. You do see there's still some of them left on Echo's side. You still see one Inspired Soul, and that they could even choose to skip it completely because they might not need it for the rest of the dungeon. As you can see, Pima is still slightly behind because Echo pulled this additional trash earlier on. So we'll see if they just completely choose to skip it. But yeah, Echo definitely ahead at this point. Not only in trash percentage, but just geographically in the dungeon as well, as they're just about to finish the boss now and Pima just getting there. So Pima just doing everything a little bit slower.
Echo not actually end up killing all those Shackled Souls. I guess they don't need the count in this dungeon. They decided that those Shackled Souls, I mean, they are really efficient to be pulling into the boss, but not something that is mandatory. You do see Frag here going on a stealth mission, using that camo to be able to trap one of those Sludge Spewers. Now you actually see the other mob. I don't think it's a Sludge Spewer, it's one of the other jumpy boys, the Refuse guys. He's also getting trapped. So both of the Inspiring mobs are getting trapped there, or paralysis, I guess, and making sure that they do get kicks on the Sludge Spewer's Violent Eruption cast. Very important, because if that goes off, then you're doing 50% reduced damage across the whole entire party. The Decaying Fill, you can kind of let it go off, doesn't really do too much. But yeah, the other cast from the Sludge Spewer is absolutely imperative to kick.
Yeah, definitely do not want to have that damage reduction on everybody, especially as it is a disease as well. So it just slowly would have to be dispelled by the healer and by Mara. So it just takes a really, really long time to get rid of. As they're just now finishing off the trash, it takes them quite a long time. There's a lot of butchers in here, which can be incredibly dangerous.
Is that explosive that just went off?
Yeah, there's a bunch of explosives that went off already at the start as well. It almost looked like they chose to let some of them go off, because some of them spawned on these seed mobs here on the spewer that is actually inspired. So because the CC still makes them spawn the inspired, they still have to be careful with those explosives. But yeah, they're done now, as they just now have to finish off the last mob here, the Spoor that they succeeded at the start, and Piami just now managing to get to the same pool. So Piami definitely like a whole pool behind at this point. So they have to catch up quite a bit, as Echo is now using or just running past this one single mob here. It patrols around this circle, so sometimes you can just walk past it without having to use any sort of invis potions or anything.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, they were just using the turtle with the Feign Death. I mean, that's a pretty common technique for being able to skip it. On live, you could actually just either use like Shroud, or you can just wait for the patrol, like Nagura said. You definitely do not need to spend something like resources like that to be able to deal with that. Now they have the Pride. Now Echo has the Pride with the Diseased Horror. This is really scary. So they need to make sure that they're continuing to get kicks on this Diseased Horror. It is a meat shield cast. It's a 1 second arm time, and as soon as it actually goes off, it will immediately apply a shield. So you need to make sure that you kick it in the 1 second arm time. Very important as to not have to burn any more damage into that mob than you otherwise would like to. The Pride is starting to go down pretty fast for Echo. You can tell that that's their clear focus mob. PI me, not too far behind. Those 2 deaths at the beginning still, I feel like, put them behind really, really far. Now Echo is getting ready to pull their gas bag with the notable ability of Backle, which he does a frontal and a Backle at the same time. You have to dodge off to the side to make sure you don't get hit by that. Oh, okay, so they're actually going to meld off all of this trash. So they pull all the way through, they actually drop a Binding Shot and a Ring of Peace to be able to make sure that the mobs didn't get too close to them. Then they meld as a group, skip all of that trash. I think that that's a really solid pull, because I do think that that gas bag is not exactly super efficient. And those small mobs that are with them, the refuse mobs, are not great either. But they're on to Gorechop.
Oh, Piami actually had a cast go off by the Spoors that we were talking about. The disease that reduces your damage done by 20% on your whole group. They did manage to get rid of 2 of them by dispelling, and 1 of them with the ice block. So actually only 2 diseases left, 1 in Kurisu, but Iglo going down, unfortunately, there at the very end. And this is the Pride one as well. This might be a full team wipe for them, because their healer is dead. Yeah, this is a full team wipe, unfortunately. It looked like a really big pull that they were trying to do there, and it just didn't work out for them. This is going to be a full reset. They're going to have to get back and just deal with the trash again and finish off this Pride. Yeah, just another huge time loss for them, unfortunately. As Echo, on the other hand, just 0 deaths, very, very clean run, as they're dealing with Gorechop on their side. They do have their Bloodlust available, but at this point, it looks like they're just going to be saving it because they know they're only getting 1 more in this dungeon. So we'll see what they're going to be using it later on. But yeah, really clean run so far by Echo.
Yeah, now Echo doing a really good job of dealing with Gorechop. Gorechop's main ability that he does is the Hateful Strike. And it's an immense amount of tank damage, so now doing a great job of rotating his defensives, being able to tank this boss fully. They're also dodging out of the way of those hooks and those gates. Now Gorechop has died. They're making their way, hitting the hooks on their ride up. Now they only have the Zav PvP boss wing left with a bunch of the mini-bosses. There's been a lot of different strategies in the Zav wing, and I'm interested to see what Echo elects to do. We notably know that PI ends up doing double mini-boss together at some point, where they like end up CCing these 3, oh goodness, what are these mobs called? Ossified Conscripts, I think is the name of it. Yeah, the Conscripts. They CC all 3 of them, and then they pull double mini-boss into it, and then once one of the mini-bosses die, then they pull the 3 CC'd mobs. Whereas on the side of Echo, it looks like they're just doing the Conscripts, the Arbalist, and potentially even double mini-boss together. It looked like Frag ran off
really
the
dangerous.
side, but I can't tell what he's. But I couldn't tell what he's doing.
Yeah, this is really dangerous because you have the inspired mob here, so none of these casts can actually be interrupted, and the Arbalists are casting this the bleed effect that does a huge amount of damage.
Yeah.
But they did manage to finish off all of the trash at this point, or the lower HP trash, and only have the mini boss left. Looks like they did not pull anything else on top of it. We do see Azalea actually being the Necrolord in this group, so Azalea having the ability to activate these banners to get the versatility and the movement speed buff. Oh, they're spawning. They're skipping the Pride? Maybe?
They may just leave it here to fight it before the last boss.
Yeah, so that's probably what they're
going
to do. Yeah.
Okay, so the reason that they're going to leave it there is because if they leave it any further forward, the whenever you have to do the PvP phase on Zav, then you would be thrown straight into the Pride. So they have to spawn it outside of the room. That actually makes a lot of sense. That's really good.
Yeah, this room that they just were in is actually the arena area from the
my
boss they're gonna be fighting
gosh.
later. So this is an insane pull. Okay, this is crazy. They've been pulling the captain apart. Oh, this is what
They
Fragrance
parried
did
it.
earlier. Fragrance actually pulled the ancient captain to the side, probably with some turtle and feign death shenanigans. Put the trap onto the ancient captain to be able to just get him away. This is actually a very, very nice strategy we just saw here by Echo. So the ancient captain is the one that applies that 75% AoE damage reduction aura to nearby enemies and also a 25% damage increase. And it's also inspired at the same time with those affixes. So what happened was Fragrance just pulling that pack earlier, just getting it to the side, seeing it with a trap, and then once they were done with the first mini boss, they just walked into this room, being able to pull the mini boss with the rest of the trash without that captain. So that was actually very well done. This is going to save them quite a lot of time.
Wreck, being the notable champion that is also spawned another mini boss spawned by Echo. Advent Nethermore is the one that you really, really, really hope to not get. You absolutely want Wreck. It's a significantly faster mob to kill and significantly less dangerous for the whole entire group. So Echo being able to get Wreck here is also going to save them a lot of damage than they otherwise would have. Is this enough count for the rest of the dungeon, Nagura? Are they just going to leave that champion CC'd for the rest of it and just
I think
meld it all
they're
off?
gonna ignore it. Yeah, I definitely don't think
Okay.
they're gonna be playing this. They might be playing the Shackled Souls they still have left to get the last percentage. I'm not 100% sure what they're gonna be doing. They still have
I think
the
it's gonna
Pride
be
as
it.
well. Oh yeah, it's actually done. Yeah, so that was actually all the trash they needed. Yeah, they're up to 100%. Looks like they even playing this Pride. They don't have the invisibility potion ready anyway, right? Because of the 80% skip they did earlier. So that's a 5-minute cooldown. But they did use the Shadow Melt, as you can see. Everyone used Shadow Melt, and Fragrance did use the Feign Death to de-aggro that captain that they were in combat with that was in-capped in the back. So definitely de-aggroed that, and now they're dealing with that 100% Pride. Then they're going to be doing the boss, then they do another Pride, and then they do the last boss. So very nice route by Echo here.
Yeah, now you actually do see that Pride being killed off by Echo, getting their buff. Now they are making their way into Zav. Like having Pride on pull for Zav, it is probably one of the most important bosses. And the reason that that is the case is because of his banners that he ends up spawning and the PvP phases that he ends up doing. So if you're able to skip one of the PvP phases and potentially even skip banners that you would otherwise have to kill, then actually eating that Pride buff, potentially even using Bloodlust, can be worth a lot on this boss. That's obviously for general purposes. It's not exactly the case always for the MDI. Echo electing that they don't need Bloodlust. They don't think that that's actually going to save them enough time, but they think that doing that Pride is pretty fortuitous. You see Genji and Frag going downstairs, PvPing versus one another. Mirez now and Zalia still left up top. It looks like Frag is going to end up winning that duel, gaining that damage buff, making Genji do slightly less damage. Frag is now dealing with the banner, dumping a bunch of aim shots into it. Pretty good job.
I think it's arguably the best RNG to keep Maris upstairs, right? Because the Windwalker does have this nice two-target cleave, but Piami actually having huge problems on their pull, as it looks like they're having another full team wipe as they were trying to do one of these Hail Mary pulls because they were so far behind. They knew this and they just tried to do something crazy and it didn't work out for them, as they did have that Pride buff from the 80% Pride that they spawned. Just didn't work out for them, unfortunately, up to 11 deaths at this point. Echo, on the other hand, finishing off the boss, and now we can see why they spawned the Pride in outside this area. Now they're pulling it right after the boss, getting another Pride to be able to finish that last boss. We do see one of them probably went off and started that event. Looks like it was Fragrance. So Fragrance left earlier to go upstairs to just be able to trigger that event, because there's a little bit of an RP event that is happening, and somehow he jumped back down. How did he do that?
So the hole is still open for like 15 seconds after you go up top. So he just jumps back down and makes sure he hits disengage right before he hits the bottom. That way the whole entire group immediately ports up top, and he's able to get some damage in on the Pride. Now Mordretha has a reduced activation time. Now they have the Pride buff, Bloodlust, all damage cooldowns popped on pull. There's basically 2 Bloodlust timings that you can use for this fight, but in terms of MDI purposes, you would absolutely rather just Bloodlust with all of your offensive CDs on pull just for the massive time gain. Now the Dark Devastation frontal cast is going out, everybody dodging away from it, and at 50%, the boss is empowered. It starts doing the Clash and the Charge abilities, which are those like image ghoul kind of mobs. Now you see the Echoes of Carnage is going to start summoning those mobs. This is actually pretty scary clash timing because they did also have that portal during it. They're going to get their next portal also during another charge wave, I think, assuming that they're not going to kill the boss quick enough. It looks like the boss is even going to die before they even have another portal phase. So Echo is absolutely melting this boss and going to be down in this dungeon sub 20 minutes. Holy moly, to be able to take the map 1-0.
That's right. Echo with a fantastic tear through Theater of Pain here. You know they've been practicing this one a lot to be ready for the finals as well. They take that victory, and they are up 1 right now versus PI Mizarro. That was phenomenal.
Yeah, that was a great performance from Echo, but I'm kind of curious what's up with PI Me. You know, we always talk about them as being the sort of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde team, but I think it's like more, it's not necessarily that. It always seems like they always play really well against teams they feel they're better than, and then whenever they play a team that they feel they're worse than, maybe, they just try to do too much and it never goes right for them. It's so weird to watch.
Yeah, I think in some respects, it could definitely be trying to overcommit and go over the top in some respects. But I think in other cases, you know, I mean, we saw a little bit of Theater of Pain from the side of PI Me when they were facing up against Golden Guardians here, Tettles, and it wasn't really a phenomenal performance for them either. They still had a lot of deaths onto that one. So I think it might also just be on the low end of like their focus for a lot of this lower bracket run that they've been having as well, because they've only ever really had to play it one time.
I mean, they would have to, like, if they wanted to make it all the way through the finals, they would have to play it 3 times. I feel like this should have been like...
Sure. But I mean, what's the most immediate like set of things that they should be practicing for?
That's a good point. You know,
the slew of dungeons to be able to get them there versus the grand finals, right?
That is absolutely true. And they may not be as practiced at it. It looks like their routing means that they are practiced at it. It just makes me think that they're not the most consistent with the runs that they're doing. They're trying to do really ambitious stuff with like the with Rec plus like all the champion and all the arbalists and whatnot. That's a scary pull. Of course, we did see Curry die twice on the first boss. Not exactly the most dangerous pull I've ever seen, especially whenever you watched Echo do something that was even bigger with the Inspired mob on top of it and were able to pull it off. But again, it was just like another time loss. They were being nickeled and dimed at the very beginning. And then, of course, the full wipes really were the nail in the coffin for them.
Yeah, most definitely. And so let's start going over as well the fantastic run that Echo had and where PIME just started to falter.
Yeah, there were some really questionable plays on the side of PIME, and one of the things I wanted to highlight was the double hunter death on the first boss here. The first death is just, you know, gets overwhelmed with a bunch of damage. Maybe should have committed the turtle here. The Raging Tantrum going off while he's just getting bolted down is really unfortunate. But the second death is really weird. So he gets rezzed, and by the time the res goes off and he accepts it, both the Plague Bolt and the Necromantic Bolt have already started been casting. So technically he shouldn't have been able to get targeted with them, but he still gets bolted down by something here. Now, I don't know if the fact that they're in the dungeon journal, they say that they're casted at a random target means they can still target somebody after the cast already starts, but that was just a really weird second death, and I don't know if that's necessarily Curry's fault right there. But then it didn't really matter because they just kept wiping later on to the Manifestation of Pride. But that second death was just so weird.
That's how I got killed by God King Scovald, and people flamed me for years for that, and I don't want to hear it. Yeah, the boss.
I see that sits deep.
Mobs.
Do you think about this at night when you lay in bed?
Yes. So mobs can retarget you if you're battle rest and hit you with something that's not even initially targeting you. It's very an interesting mechanic, I will admit. Makes me mad. I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter at all.
4+ years later. But okay, that's going to mean we're moving on into Plaguefall here for the next game in the series, Nagura. And this one has been a lot more frequently practiced and a lot more frequently played by both of these teams.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like PIME really had some super clean runs. They played it 2 times in tournament. It was also a time trial run where they got the number 6 seed, while Echo, though, on their side, they get the number 1 seed in the time trials. And they got the fastest run that we've seen in this tournament in this dungeon as well. It was a 17 minutes 42 seconds dungeon that they played in their very first series on Friday. But that means that since they played this very fast dungeon on Friday, Pima definitely had enough time to look at the strategy, look at the route that Echo has been playing, and maybe adapted their route. But 1742 is definitely really fast, and it's going to be hard for Pima to beat them unless Echo makes some mistakes here and there, which we've seen them make before in Plaguefall.
Yeah, and Plaguefall is definitely one of these dungeons that has a lot of execution requirements onto them, Zyro. There's a lot of stress onto the tanks for setting up the Plague Borer pulls, and teams really got to be able to watch out for how they're setting them up and staying alive, really, before they detonate.
Yeah, in terms of execution-based dungeons, Plaguefall is definitely one of the most difficult ones, right? Like you mentioned, the Plague Borers pretty much deal with the entire middle section of the dungeon from the first boss almost all the way to the third, except one or two trash packs. There's a lot that you have to deal with, and any misplaced Plague Borer at that point in the dungeon is like a 30-second time loss because you have to wait for the next set of 2 to spawn. So making sure the teams are like on point with literally every single set of Plague Borers into each trash pack is really important here.
Yeah, most definitely. And, there's also, just looking at some of these teams, like Negro was saying, Settles, 2-minute difference or so between Pima and Echo on the Theater of Pain, on the Plaguefall, excuse me. So there's going to be a lot more that we'd be looking to see from Pima to be able to execute at that level.
I don't think at this point, if you're Pima, you're like expecting to hit like a 1742. I don't even think that they should adapt their strategy. They've played this dungeon twice already this weekend. They had about 19 minutes both times, pretty consistent runs, no deaths. I think if you're Pima, you just kind of have to commit to the 19-minute run, and you just kind of hope that Echo kind of lobs you the run. I don't think that there's for them to be able to make up a minute and 15 seconds or so is just like not reasonable to even ask from them. Because that's like orders of magnitude, like multiple pulls difference just between the teams. So while it would be nice to say, oh yeah, this is just like this very small tip to save you a minute and 15 seconds into Plaguefall. It's probably not happening.
Other teams hate him. This one simple trick to improve your run.
Hate him. This one simple tip that Dr. J used to save a minute and 15 seconds in Plaguefall. No, but I think that they just have a 19-minute run. They go for it, and then they hope that Echo makes a mistake. I think that's what you have to be hoping for.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think, you kind of touched on it as well, Zyro, and it reminded me of, what we'd heard from, JB a very long time ago back in, Legion and BFA and everything about if you feel comfortable with your run, you're almost not doing it as well as some of the top end of your opponents can do as well, right?
Yeah, that was specifically about Echo back then. It was like, well, we're comfortable with our route now, but is that good enough for Echo? And yeah, that's exactly the situation we're in right now. Pima has a 19-minute run, but if Echo plays well, that's not going to be good enough. So they kind of just have to hope Echo lobs in the run, unless they've found a minute somehow in the past days worth of practice. I
mean, the only way that they could have found a minute is that they abused the Wonder Grow Fungal Mancer, in my mind. But that's like so there's a mob that you can spam Spell Steal on your mage, and it's like the Wonder Grow gives you a pretty sizable damage increase. But like it's called Wonder Grow, but again, like I said, that would require like a full rework of their strategy, and I'm not so sure that Pima has had enough time to be able to do that.
Yeah, we'll see as game number 2 is getting underway. Echo up 1, looking to make their return to the finals by knocking out Pima, who's still holding on here. Let's get into game number 2, and it's Plaguefall.
All right, last chance for Pima to stay in this tournament, while Echo really wants to get to this final and meet Perplexed again, as they lost to them earlier in this upper final. So let's see what those two teams are going to be doing in Plaguefall. Both of them already played it in this tournament, and both of them already played it in the time trials as well. So let's see if they adjust their strategies or if they're just trying to do the same thing as they already did before. Echo doing a really big pull onto the left side here at the very start, also pulling the big mob as well, while Pima is going to the right. So already a difference in the first pull.
Yeah, Echo is hashtag Hornet Gang, Pima hashtag Mushroom Gang. Just a little bit in difference of the strategy. I think it's both 14%. I think both teams end up being at 14% enemy forces whenever the mobs end up dying. And then they end up spawning their pride off of this next pull. You're going to see that Pima is going to grab these mobs, pull them straight into the other Hornet pack. Echo going to do the exact same pull, as a matter of fact, going straight into the nest as well. I mean, they're getting the exact same number of count. PIME is actually slightly faster. You do see a Plague Borer going off. That notably is not one of the rigged Plague Borers. So there are two types of Plague Borers. The rigged Plague Borers, and then there's the normal ones. The rigged ones are after the first boss. The normal ones are in this first boss area, and they are not super good. They don't kill mobs for you, unfortunately.
Yeah, so Echo is actually just dealing with the second pack pretty fast, it looks like. We do have bolstering and storming. That is really something we have to take into account, because bolstering, if you mismanage that, it can cause a lot of issues. Now, they are all playing Night Elves, so theoretically, if something goes wrong, like if they somehow bolster them up really highly, they could just, use their Shadow Melt to de-aggro them up, make sure it resets, and then pull it again. But it's still just a huge amount of time loss. And also, just having slight bolstering mismanagement is also going to cost you precious seconds that you need later on in this dungeon, right? So if you don't evenly AoE everything, and you just single target the higher HP mobs, they can cause lots of issues. Looks like Echo is actually Shadow Melting off this one mob they had there in the back. A Fungal Mancer, PIME doing the exact same thing. Having a Fungal Mancer there in the back, just Shadow Melting off the aggro. And yeah, really close between those two at this point.
So something interesting about the Fungal Mancer too is it will cast the Wonder Grow even while afflicted by CC. So they actually pulled it in order for Dr. J to be able to just like spam spell steal the Wonder Grow. They're going to leave it there. They're not bringing it with them through the rest of the dungeon. I mean, that's what we saw Golden Guardians was doing. They were like playing it with like the rest of the instance, which can be good. Actually, I lied. Look at this. Here comes the Fungal Mancer. You see Rentari walking away, trying to get a CC on it. I think he made cage. Okay, so yeah, look at this. He got a cage on that. Now he's pulling Globgrog in to where Dr. J can spell steal this Fungal Mancer. Fungal Mancer actually gets broken by something. But
do you think this? I think this was a mistake, because look at their Shadow Melts. They all Shadow Melted. I think this might have just been something going wrong.
Maybe?
Do you think?
Because, I mean, it's hard to say. The Fungal Mancer strategy is very good. The reason that it's hard to know is because the Fungal Mancer strategy is like the best, right? Having this Wonder Grow, having this mob that basically gives your mage free damage over the course of the whole entire. Never mind, this was a mistake. They're wiping. They're resetting the boss right now.
I think they're just resetting the boss. Because, I mean, theoretically, it sounds like a good idea, but first of all, it's bolstering. Second of all, there's so many other ads that you need to see, because the big, like the slime blobs that basically go towards the boss, you wanted to see them. And look, if you look at their team composition, they really don't have a lot to be able to deal with them, right? They have the Ring of Peace, they have the Incap, but that's about it, right? So if they have to see one additional mob on top of also the other mobs, they're just running out of CC at that point. And it looks like they didn't even manage to get rid of the aggro either, because they didn't have Shadow Melt available. So they just had to they just needed to wipe completely and reset this whole pool. Just this is just so unfortunate for PIME, just not being able to de-aggro this mob. Just so many things going wrong from the get-go. Very, very unfortunate.
Yep, now we're definitely... Echo is, I would say, firmly in the driver's seat, an order of magnitude of minutes ahead at this point. I would say even like 2 to 3 minutes. That mistake from PIME was an absolute calamity. Now they're continuing on with the instance. They're going to use the Plague Borers to be able to destroy all this trash. The Plague Borers are notably target capped at 5 targets. So, they actually end up like manually killing a lot of that trash, and then letting the Plague Borers kind of just finish off the last couple of mobs as they get bolstered at like 5% or whatnot. Now they have the Manifestation of Pride here. With the last Plague Borer. So you're not even going to be hitting the Pride here. You're just going to be nuking down the Plague Borer, getting it to 30% HP. Once it's 30% HP, it'll start blowing up. It'll kill the Pride for you, and you're kind of chilling.
I like how these slimes, the red slimes, actually drop a red zone on the ground that can be flash crafted by the Necrolord, Salia being the Necrolord in Echo's group. But even without the flashcraft, you can just stand in the zone, and it does give you a haste buff, but it also does ticking damage to you. And Gingy, the mage in Echo, was actually just standing in that pool to get the haste during the Pride AoE that was happening.
Yeah.
Healers love to see it when they have to heal the Pride plus the tick at the same time, but did manage to pull it off. As they're now going into this big pool, we do see the combustion being popped by Gingy, and we do see Zalia with that buff just running around, making sure everyone is getting the haste buff. That's why Zalia is actually standing in melee range here, because that haste buff is actually a pretty short range, so definitely want to make sure to be close to the person that used the flashcraft.
Yeah, exactly. It is a really short range, which is unfortunate. You actually do see... Okay, now does a really good job of getting the Sigil of Misery onto that one Plague Boar.
Oh no. Did it
That's
make it?
not great. So Frag now has to be tanking the other Slime Tentacle. Okay, so this is actually fine. There's not going to be any time lost, but that was kind of scary there for a moment because Frag had to like face tank that Slime Tentacle. With him being on the DK, it's not as bad since he is a plate wearer. He's just going to be tanking the melees. The issue is if the Tentacle starts casting a bunch, then that could potentially be problematic, but it's not a huge deal. So now Blightweaver gets double bombed. Echo is going to position themselves to be able to pull another pack with these additional Plague Boars that they're going to be getting off of Blightweaver. No, they're actually going to... What are they going to do here? I'm interested to see. So it looks like they're just going to kill the Pride with the Plague Boars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so because of this bolstering, all of those teams actually have adapted their strategy to not use the Plague Boars for the trash after this.
Okay,
they basically
right.
just use it for the Pride, and then they move on and do the rest of the trash without, because it is tyrannical, so the trash has a lot less HP. They can just gather it all up and nuke it down without having to use those Plague Boars. And this is really something that we've seen as an adaptation, I think, that probably is being used in the future as well. I think even without bolstering, they're still just not going to be using those Plague Boars because the amount of time it takes to set up, you know, you have to go back, pick them up, move them forward, make sure they hit the trash. And if you see how fast the trash is dying without those Plague Boar explosions, it just doesn't seem to be worth it for them anymore, just because of the whole backtracking that they have to do, right? You always have to go back and forth to pick them up, right?
It's also the target, like the Plague Boar's are target cap too, so
they're target capped as well, yeah.
Yeah, it ends up messing up your bolstering pretty heavily. You're absolutely spot on with that. Now Echo is just dealing with this congealed slime, like you were saying earlier, standing inside of that haste buff. I think it's like 15% haste. They're just gonna stand here and say, "Heal me, Zalia. I'm here to do damn." Honestly, Zalia is going to oblige. This is not too... I don't know. The healing here is not like too strenuous, especially since Zalia is also affected by the 15% haste. Disc Priest is able to translate a lot of their damage into healing as well. So he's getting a lot out of it. It's not the most mana efficient thing, but this is like not a super mana, like a mana taxing boss. Ickis now hits that 60% mark. He leaps over to his other platform. You see Frag uses his Door of Shadows. This is where you see the Power Word Barrier and the Anti-Magic Zone come out in tandem to be able to make sure that the group lives through the bomb. The MDI teams have determined that killing the bomb is just strictly not worth, but they would rather just let it explode and use major raid defensives on it. I guess I would call it a raid defensive, but that's how it is. You do also see the congealed slime parried off to the side. They use Shining Force to be able to knock that out. Then a paralysis over top that to be able to just do the most damage to the boss, because the boss is the highest priority here.
Yeah, and there we go. We do see those cooldowns being popped. You can see the two bubbles and also ice block and pain suppression and AMS being used by the DK to be able to survive this. And now they're moving on. At this point, they're just trying to finish off the boss before that bomb explodes. So they're going to be ignoring this plague bomb as well. But this time around, they're just going to be nuking the boss before it explodes. The congealed slime, actually, Ickis jumped next to the congealed slime. That's actually a little bit of an issue. Now they managed to use the Shining Force to get the mob away, but that cost them quite a bit of damage. They should be fine though, because they still have the Touch of Death from Maris as well. There we go. So they are going to be fine, but it can definitely cause some issues if you position yourself wrongly and the boss jumps on you. If you're next to the congealed slime, it applies that damage reduction aura to the boss, and then it can cause some issues. But they did manage to recover, and now we do see a CC coming out on the slime and just walking past the tentacle. Not really worth it for them to kill it, because those tentacles, they're immobile, of course, and there's this middle trash bag can't really be pulled on top of it, so they just completely choose to ignore it and just walk past them.
Yeah, this is a really dangerous part with all the storming sitting on this very small platform and all of the area that was being covered by that giant goop that they just put on the ground. But Echo does a really good job not getting knocked up by tornadoes, making sure that they're able to not pull any of these tentacles. Now they're making their way onto the Domina Venom Blade section. The assassins are the ambushers are the most dangerous mobs here. They drop the spiderlings, but notably they also just melee really hard. So that's one of the things that you have to be watching out for. You do also see the sniper is parried off to the side. They didn't have double grip, so they elect to use para on that. It is outside of the 30-yard range, which is the range for bolstering. So doing a really good job of utilizing CC, such as that cage, such as that para, to keep mobs either out of combat or outside that 30-yard range. It will be dealt with the 80% prideful that should be spawning here momentarily once these defenders end up dying, and then they will just cleave down the ambusher with the sniper and the pride.
As far as I'm aware, they're actually just going to completely ignore them and just shut them off the aggro later. Yeah, because they're up to 85% already, so they actually don't need any additional trash because the last 15% is just going to be dealt with in the last boss room. So this is their route. They basically just know, you know what, we don't need this trash. And specifically also because of bolstering, this sniper is really hard to gather up with the rest of the trash because it's just really hard to move. And then they just decided, you know what, we're just going to CC this. We don't deal with this at all. Sally's actually really low on mana. We do see the bubble come out of Fragments here to be able to reduce the damage down a little bit. Sally going down, actually. They do have a battle rest available. And Fragments immediately using it, but Jinji going down too. So they have to use one more battle rest. So both of their battle rests, actually, no, never mind. So it looks like Salia is using the out of combat rest, did use the Shadow Melt. Actually, he is out of combat anyway because he got rest. So he could just use that out of combat rest to get him back up. And they still have one battle rest in case something does go wrong from here on out.
Yeah, so now they're going to need to make sure that those mobs, the ambusher and the sniper, remain CC during Domina. They have these brute assassins that will spawn outside of the web. Okay, so they used Mirror Image to be able to break all of them out first set. For the second set, it could be problematic depending on where Domina's web ends up going. Maybe they're even able to skip the second set of those assassins with this prideful buff. That may be one of the biggest reasons that they elect to play that pride. It's hard to really tell all the time. It's kind of 50-50 as to whether or not even 50-50. You see about 10% of the prides skipped, but typically the prides that are skipped are the ones that don't allow you to skip any damage phases, that don't allow you to enable any pulls, and the ones that are just like pretty easy to skip. This one may have just been one of those things that's like not super easy to skip, but it also looks like they're not able to skip an assassin phase, which is unfortunate, but the assassin webbing doesn't spawn in a position to where it would have broken the para or the cage. Then you just need to make sure that they're getting repairs and cages on these mobs, and now they're going to group meld off the mobs like Negro was talking about, as they are at 85% enemy forces. Icker and all the Valded adds downstairs give enough for the rest of the party for the remainder of the instance. PIME is very clearly out of the running, unfortunately. They're still at 30% on Dr. Ickis. Echo would kind of have to run it down at this point for them to be able to bounce back, I think.
Yeah, it's just too many issues for PIME, and I mean, especially this very first mistake they made just cost them so much time. They already had committed their Bloodlust for the boss, and then this mob comes in and they committed all the offensive cooldowns. It's just a huge amount of time loss, right? There can be a couple of deaths here and there which really don't cost you as much, but those kind of deaths just cost you so much more. First of all, the whole boss fight resets. The Bloodlust is lost, a 10-minute cooldown just gone, and those deaths just mean so much more for them, unfortunately. But Echo, I mean, they had a really clean run. Those two deaths that they had really didn't lose them too much time at all. It was just those two deaths on the Pride, because Sally was completely out of mana, they didn't have any offensives left, and they just did manage to recover pretty quickly. So it's really just the 10 seconds of the counter they lost, but not really any more time in the dungeon. So they're now dealing with this mini-boss here and the Devoted area. They're just trying to get as much single target damage as possible onto this mini-boss, because the Devoted, they're just dying with the AoE cleave that they have. So now they're just trying to finish off that last Devoted that was actually still in the back, and then they're spawning their Pride. Might be skipping it even.
Oh, they are skipping it. Look at that. All the invis potions coming out. Interesting to note about Icker Bileflash, especially on bolstering, is that he is one of the mobs that cannot get bolstered in the game. He's one of the very few, just because of how the Devoted ads end up working. So you saw Echo was like running around killing the Devoted ads. The Devoted ads will bolster one another. So that's something that you have to factor in whenever you're killing all these mobs. But they were just taking Mr. Bileflesh from pack to pack to pack to pack, and were able to deal with them like that. I think that skipping this last Pride is not something that we've seen super commonly from a lot of the other teams, but I feel like it's something that should be done. I think that the time saved by skipping it is pretty high. I would say that you probably end up saving like 25 to 30 seconds by skipping it, especially since Margrave, you don't even get like a full use of the Pride buff, right? You have to go into this intermission where Margrave is no longer targetable, and now Margrave would come back out and they'd probably have like 15 seconds left of the Pride, but it's like it's not the best use of Pride ever. So I think that skip really smart. They use their 5-minute invisibility potions on it. Now they just have to dodge out of the way of tentacles. They need to miss the second infectious rain here. You see Frag popping his dark transformation and his army. So he's going to be using all of his offensive CDs because he sees things like Zwin, SEF, Combustion not available for his other members of the party. They will use those in the last phase. So Margrave needs to get to 33% here to be able to phase into the next intermission. So that's relying really heavily on Frag's damage. And then Genji and Maris will bring it home at the very end.
Yeah, and I mean, look at the timer there, 1640 into the dungeon, and their best run that they did 2 days ago was 1742. So they might even be able to beat their own time if they manage to get into this intermission phase soon, which is quite impressive considering that this dungeon here, Plaguefall, this is the only time they have to play it again. It was not in their upper final series, and it was also not in the final series. So the fact that they somehow managed to either improve their strategy or just somehow play this better, even with the 2 deaths that they have, is actually really impressive. So even with the 10 seconds additionally on this on this timer here, they still somehow managed to beat their own time. As they're in the last phase now, they're gonna melt the boss with the bloodlust, with the combustion, I mean, from the Genji, which is almost like a bloodlust, right? As Margrave Shadama is just melting, and you can see the huge amount of single target damage coming out. Also, just using the defensives here to be able to get more damage onto the boss. And there we go. Didn't actually beat their own timer, but just 1 second slower than they were before. And this is going to be Echo winning their series against Pima, moving on to that final against Perplexed.
Wow, Echo not wanting to let anything stop their advance. They take that 2-0 sweep. And really, Pima just kind of seemed like a different team in this series entirely, Zyro.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what you were saying before. They just don't seem to perform when they play teams that are at the top of their game, right? I do like what Pima ended up trying here. They knew they had a slower overall time in this dungeon, so they went for this Hail Mary strat, but unfortunately it just didn't work out for them.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes to show how important